to what extent was this, in any meaningful way, a budget for families? Samantha Callan is the Associate Director for Families at the Centre for Social Justice, a think tank created by Ian Duncan-Smith, of course, and Giselle Cory is from the Institute for Public Policy Research. Both are in Westminster, and a very good morning to both of you. Samantha, I can start with you. I suppose, in a sense, from the Centre for Social Justice perspective, as a think tank, you're very keen on getting people like the long-term unemployed back into work. In a sense, the key event yesterday for you wasn't so much the budget, so much as those unemployment figures which came out just before it.
Well, let me just say something about this budget. The Chancellor's job was to paint a budget in bright primary colours, I think, so that families could understand it, because people very rarely, the electorate don't listen to the Chancellor very often. Now, I think he managed to do that. I wouldn't defend everything he said. I wish he'd gone further in terms of family taxation. So, for example, he did say that the marriage tax allowance was going to be raised to the equivalent of £220, up from 212. Well, now, what we've got is a major imbalance in our tax system, where single earner families and people go through stages where there's only one earner. They just don't get a look in. So, just one more thing on the unemployment. I do think this kind of lowering national insurance for under 21s. This is very important. They're not the ones going to university, aiming for the apprenticeships next year. So there were basically signals to parents: we understand what's going on in your life.
Giselle, did you take that away from it, that there were some strong signals for parents coming out of this budget?
Well, no, to be honest, I thought the budget was much more about what wasn't said than what was said. There was some big gaps there, in particular in terms of family policy. There was very little discussion of things which matter to families, such as childcare, elder care, education, healthcare. I mean, these are very big areas. These are areas which are struggling at the moment. I'll take childcare as an example. We've seen childcare costs rise by a quarter over the last Parliament. That is way above inflation. It's unsustainable. It's going to keep people out of making real choices about how they live their life with their families, and it matters. And that was on that the Chancellor was completely silent.
Samantha, you say the Chancellor did mention. Sorry, go on.
I have to disagree. We've already had so much said about childcare. £2,000 for every child, when parents earn up to £150,000 each. I would have really liked the Chancellor to say, we're not going to give so much money away to the high earners. We're going to use more of that money to support the marriage allowance. Now, the reason I say that is it's not just a bung for the marriage. You only get it if one of you isn't earning.
We know, don't we, Samantha? We know that George Osborne hates the idea. He considers it to be social engineering. He wants to be neutral about people's, as he sees it, moral choices. But other people see it as
yesterday, did he?
Well, yeah, but it wasn't talking. Well,
nobody else would.
It wasn't talking about the couple penalty and all that sort of stuff. This idea that actually this narrative that some people cleave to, which is the government needs to do more to support the institution of marriage, not penalising people who aren't, but induce and nudge people towards a way of living together which is apt to bring up children and create stable families. Didn't hear much of that yesterday from him.
Well, you wouldn't in a budget. I mean, I wish they'd raised it, because we've said consistently, look, when families have perhaps a child under 3, and very often that's the time, we found that almost 90% of people said that's when the government should help people to stay at home a bit more. They appreciate the choice. There's not a choice about taking a little bit of time off when your children are younger. That could be the mum or the dad. So we don't have a lot of choice. But as I say, what I thought was so interesting yesterday was I think in some ways Margaret Thatcher would have liked the messaging, because it was very much about what are the kind of things people are thinking right now. A lot of people have gone through a very difficult time for the last 5 years, and what they want to know is that the debt isn't just going to keep sliding even further in their own households. And that was the big signal that was being sent out into the country yesterday. And the things like help for savers, no more tax returns. Well, these are very good messages.
Let me just bring Giselle back in as well. We also heard, and so, sometimes it can feel slightly ritualistic. A 2p off the wine, a penny off the beer, cheaper fuel because we're going to suspend the fuel escalator, all that sort of thing. And to some people, this can feel slightly tokenistic. What are the big things for families that you felt should have been in the budget yesterday?
As I said, I think we need to talk about childcare, and I'd agree with Samantha that that needs to be targeted at lower income families. We haven't seen enough of that. We have seen money spent.
The tax allowance is raised?
The tax allowance it's not a particularly efficient or particularly progressive way to spend money. It's a very poorly targeted policy, and it doesn't get the people that need it. And the other big area I'd say that was completely missing in this budget is talking about how we make jobs better for people. I mean, there's some very important stuff that wasn't missing. We've seen growth in the UK being driven by higher employment numbers. That's great, but what we need to see now is making those jobs better, making those jobs higher paid, and that isn't going to happen on its own. And that needs investment in skills, investment in infrastructure, investment in innovation, and tech. And we saw none of that. That's a very unsustainable way to approach growth for the UK.
Okay, got to leave it right there. Giselle Cory, Samantha Callan, thanks both very much indeed. Sarah Jane.